All right. So, welcome everybody. Thank you so much for coming to our first lecture, The Epics of Homer, Iliad, and the Odyssey, under our Philosophy for All initiative aimed at educating and inspiring all through philosophical exploration of the accomplishments of mankind. My name is Maya Schutzer. I'm a student at the Socratic Experience and youth director of our Pan-Eudaimonia initiative. I am delighted to introduce our speaker, Dr. Evangelos Valianatos. Dr. Valianatos studied zoology and history at the University of Illinois and received his history doctorate at the University of Wisconsin. He did postdoctoral studies at Harvard University in the history of science, worked on Capitol Hill, the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, has instructed at multiple universities, and has written and published hundreds of articles and 7 books, including The Antikythera Mechanism, the story behind the genius of Greek computer and its demise. So before we begin the lecture, let's please hear from our founder, Georgia Namikos.
Thank you, Maya, and welcome everyone to our first lecture in a series of many more to come. I'm very, very excited and very honored by your attendance. Wisdom begins in wonder. And now I'd like to introduce Dr. Valianatos to enlighten us with the wisdom and wonders of Homer. Dr. Valianatos?
Thank you very much. Thanks, Maya, and thank you very much, Georgia, for your wonderful introduction. And it's good that we're starting with Homer because, as I will try to demonstrate, Homer was the teacher of the Greeks. This is another picture. Let me start again here. The picture you see on the very left, the central figure, of course, is Homer. And to his right, we have Dante. Dante was the great Italian poet of the 13th century. And of course, this is on the forefront of the Renaissance. So they were honoring and studying the Greeks and especially Homer. So Homer has had a very long tradition in having a tremendous influence, not only among the Greeks, but also among the Europeans and other people throughout the world. I like this painting of Homer, and this was done by an artist in the island of Evia, Evi Sarantea. And this woman is fantastic in terms of looking and reading the ancient Greek studies of philosophers, scientists, and then painting their personality, and we can use this. Now, Homer himself, we know him because of the Iliad and the Odyssey. And in these 2 books, these 2 great poems, he's telling stories of gods, war, nostos, meaning homecoming, Greek history, as well as geography, science, technology, and the cosmos. In other words, Homer was a polymath. He is not just a poet, he's a philosopher, he's a historian, he's a cosmologist, he's, as I said, the teacher of the Greeks. And of course, one of the things that you will get if you start reading the Iliad or the Odyssey is every other page there's a god. The Greeks were not Christian. The Greeks were polytheists. And of course, the picture we see here is that of Zeus. He's supposed to have been the god of thunder, thunderbolt and lightning and rain. And of course, he was everywhere. Not just merely in the pages of Homer, in the pages of Hesiod and the poets of the 5th century and 4th century, including philosophers like Aristotle and so on. Hera was the wife of Zeus, and Athena. This is a picture again of Sarandea, Athena, during the Trojan War. Here we can see 3 of the gods. On the very left is Poseidon, the god of the seas. Next to him is Apollo. Apollo was the son of Zeus. And next to Apollo, we have Artemis, the sister of Apollo and the daughter of Zeus. Artemis was the goddess of nature. Apollo was the god of light, music, prophecy. And Poseidon, of course, was the water, the god of the oceans, the seas, the rivers, you name it, everything that had to do with water. And here we have the beautiful Aphrodite. And again, this is a picture of Evi Sarandea. And what's it is, it took 2 faces of Aphrodite. One of that of Milos, who the French found the beautiful statue and they stole it, and it's now in the museum in Paris. And the other one comes from Knidos, which was a Greek polis, a city-state in the south part of the Asia Minor facing the Aegean. Here we have the daughter, Eros, or the daughter of Aphrodite, I mean, the son of Aphrodite. And this young man, Eros, is not just for love, as we understand it, but he was the most powerful of all the gods. And, Hesiod and Homer considered him the most powerful of all the gods. And he kept the cosmos together because of what modern scientists talk about. Gravity was the same thing as attraction among the planets. So the planets would be around the sun. So the sun would go do what he does, that is give us light and life, and the cosmos would be in harmony and in existence. This is a representation of the gods and kind of a feast, eating very well. But of course, the gods did not eat human food. So it's a kind of a metaphor. This man here, he's an Atlas. He's a Titan, that is the divine beings before the gods of Olympus. And he's usually portrayed like this, holding the cosmos on his shoulders. His Atlas is considered to be the god of astronomy. And you can see on the sphere that he has on his shoulders, you have some constellations. You can actually see the constellations. The constellations were a group of stars in the sky for the assistance, for the help of people that sail a boat, so they could see the constellation, let's say Bootes, the constellation, another constellation, and they would go from point A to point B in the Mediterranean. The cosmological idea of the Greeks was, first of all, centered around the Earth. That is, the Earth was considered to be, Plato was thought the Earth was the oldest.
I'm going to listen to this guy until you come back.
I beg your pardon? What?
Trisha,
We should not interfere in this when I.
go ahead.
So anyway, this is a cosmological system based on the Earth. Therefore, we call it geocentric. You can see on the picture on the right, you have the black ball that is the Earth, and around it you have all the other planets, including the sun. And then on the very top, you have the zodiac.
Hi,
Sir,
baby.
It's when we have constellations represented in the form of animals. We have 12 constellations around on the very outer circle of the sphere. Now we go into Troy and see what happens in the Trojan War, which is the key story of the Iliad. Again, Homer, as I said before, he is the polymath. He's telling history, he's telling adventures, he's telling about the history of war, about religion, and he's overall the person who taught the Greeks how to read, how to think, and because of his tremendous knowledge, he impressed even Aristotle, as I will explain. And here it is. Aristotle was, of course, the greatest of all Greek philosophers. There's no doubt in my mind. He was a student of Plato for 20 years, and he learned what Plato had said, but he went beyond Plato. And he focused on science. In fact, he invented the science of zoology as we know it today. And he had a student, Theophrastus, who came up with the whole idea of botany. So you put botany and zoology together, and you have biology, as we know it again. Now, Aristotle, he cites Homer repeatedly in both his philosophical works, in his political works, and his scientific works. And the two key scientific works are, one is called The History of Animals, and the other is called Parts of Animals. They are fantastic studies. In fact, I studied zoology at the University of Illinois, and I found it interesting, but not really very interesting. So when I was in graduate school, I started reading Homer and Aristotle. And Aristotle, when you read Aristotle's scientific studies, then that was the moment when I really began to appreciate zoology, the science that is the connections between animals, the connections between the animals and the natural world, and their relationships to the human beings. And that's the sort of thing that Aristotle did. So Aristotle, when he's investigating the animals, he would go to Homer. And Homer might have made a comment, or he might have made an observation, and you have the commentary of Aristotle say, yeah, Homer said it, and therefore it might be true, and so on. So he confirmed, and he most likely justified most of what Homer had done. So Homer, as I said, he was a kind of a pansophist. I mean, he thought of everything. So when you read the Iliad and the Odyssey, you just don't read descriptions of warfare or the adventures of Odysseus in the Odyssey. You see a description of the natural world, of the cosmos. He's talking about constellations. He's talking about the movement of the earth, and so on and so on. And it's just fantastic idea. So why am I saying this? Because unfortunately, in our times, there are scholars, quotation marks, who claim that there was no Homer, or there were many more Homers, or that the Odyssey and the Iliad were nothing else but fiction. And these people, by doing that, they downgrade the whole idea of Greek studies and Hellenism. And I find that preposterous and a little bit upsetting, because if these scholars had read Aristotle, they would never dare to say what they say. So they are not very literate people when they criticize Homer in that way. And it's just despicable to me, because this is an attack on Hellenism. Here we have the crowning of Homer. As I said, in ancient times, he was literally worshipped like a god. Here's another picture of the apotheosis of Homer, meaning making Homer like a god. And this is exactly what Aristotle considered Homer like a god. And here is another plaque of the apotheosis of Homer. And this is a picture from the epics of Homer. Wait a second. Here we go now to the Iliad, and therefore the Iliad, the protagonist of the Iliad and the greatest hero, of course, was Achilles. So we start with some background on Achilles. We see here his mother Thetis putting the baby into the river Styx in order to make the baby immortal. And then the baby grew up to be a teenager, and you can see his father, Peleus, who was the king of Thessaly, taking the teenager Achilles to the Mount Pelion to be educated by this Hieron. Hieron was a combination of a man and a horse. These were monsters, more or less, but this guy was an exception. He was extremely well educated, extremely ancient, and the greatest heroes of the Greeks would go to Pelion for some kind of advanced studies with Hieron. Finally, we get into the the days before the Trojan War. And on this picture, on the very right side, you have Odysseus discovering Achilles, who was hiding among women. He didn't apparently wanted to go to the Trojan War. But once Odysseus discovered him, he was too embarrassed. So he took his army and he joined the rest of the Greeks in Troy. Here we see him greeting Agamemnon. Agamemnon was the king of Mykene in Peloponnesus. He was the commander-in-chief of the Greek forces in Troy. Now we come to another scene of the early part of the Iliad, where unfortunately, when you have an army in an area, they need food. They also need women. They didn't bring their wives with them, so they would go around the cities, looting the city, and sometimes grabbing women and having them as concubines. In this case, Agamemnon and all the other chiefs, including Achilles, they had their own concubines. And we see in this case, the father of one of the girls that had been abducted, and she was the mistress of Agamemnon. This man was a priest of Apollo. So he begged Agamemnon to return his daughter, but of course Agamemnon said, "Get the hell out of here before I kick you out." So he did run away, and he went, and he prayed to Apollo, and of course Apollo sent a plague against the Greeks. All the story is, of course, in the Iliad. But finally, they decided it had to be, because the priest, Calchas, in the Greek troops, he warned them that unless you return the girl to her father, most of you would die because of the plague that Apollo has sent. So they decided to send the girl back, and we see the boat that is taking the girl back with Odysseus. Now, as a result of this confrontation between Agamemnon and Achilles, because Agamemnon grabbed the mistress of Achilles, and Achilles was ready to kill Agamemnon, but Athena said, "Hey, boy, don't do it." So he didn't, but he was very upset. And because he was upset, he ordered his troops away from the main troops of the Greeks fighting the Trojans. And that means they took away the greatest part, the strongest part of the army. So there you see Greek chiefs going there and begging Achilles to return back to war. And he said, "No way, I'm not going to go back." So mythographers and historians call this the wrath of Achilles. You can see him there on his throne, and he says, "No way, I'm not going to help you." And as a result of this fight, you have his mother, Thetis, going to Zeus, and he says, "Zeus, you need to punish the Greeks." And Zeus agreed to some degree, so the Greeks began to lose the war. And here is, again, the Odysseus and a couple of other Greeks talking to Achilles, but Achilles pays zero attention to them. And a war is beginning. And here we have Odysseus cutting the throat of a king from Thrace. And of course, this is Odysseus. And the other important person in the Iliad, and unfortunately Homer says nothing about him, was this man, Palamedes. Palamedes in Greek means inventor. And this guy really was a great inventor. He invented the Greek alphabet, and he invented also strategies about war. So he was very important, but because he was in conflict with Odysseus, probably that's why Homer says zero about him in the Iliad. And here we have him coming for trial. In other words, Odysseus cooked up a lie. He said, "This man is a traitor. He works for the Persians, for the Trojans." And to prove that, he put a piece of gold underneath his bed. So they discovered the gold, so they concluded that the man is a traitor, and they killed him. They stoned him to death. Again, this is Achilles on the left. And Achilles now is making a sacrifice to support the fact that his very close boyfriend, Patroclus, not to come back alive, because Patroclus, understanding that Achilles was not going to help the Greeks, he decided to get into his armor, to take his shield and so on, and go and fight the Trojans. He did, but unfortunately, he was killed by the chief hero of the Trojans, Hector. On the very left, you can see it. I cannot see it, but you have, in fact, you have Hector killing Patroclus. And on the right, with the reddish color, you have a group of Trojan and Greek soldiers fighting over the body of Patroclus. And this, of course, this beautiful vase, you can see the same scene, fighting over the body of Patroclus. And the death of Patroclus, of course, hit Achilles tremendously. So that really was a turning point. And he said, "I'm going to go back to war." So to do that, he asked his mother, who went to Hephaestus. Hephaestus was a god of metallurgy and advanced technology. And I'm not exaggerating about the advanced technology part. And so she begged him to create the weapons that you need to fight a war. So he did. He created a beautiful shield, and Homer describes that in some detail. And then, of course, the mother, Thetis, brings that. There you are, another picture where Thetis is taking all what the god had created, and he's taken to her son, and he's giving it to him. And this is an imaginary view of what the workshop of Hephaestus must have looked like. This is Achilles on the left and his mother on the right. And now Achilles is ready to go back to war. You can see he takes his forces. He's ready to go. And here is now, he's got back to battle, and he's killing now Hector. On the left, Achilles, on the right, Hector. And So this is the coming of the end of the Trojan War, the story of the Trojan War. And Achilles, because he was so mad about everybody and he had been ignored by the Greeks and so on because of his anger and so on. Not only he killed Hector, but he did something very, very abnormal, very insidious. He dragged the body of Hector around the walls of Troy. And of course, the father and the mother of Hector were watching. That was really very bad. And not only that, but he was so extreme, he was so violent because of what had happened to the killing of his friend Patroclus, that you can see here, he's having dinner, and underneath his couch, you have the body of Hector. Unprecedented, but it must have happened. Here you have now Hector's father, the king of Troy, coming and begging, kissing the hand of the killer of his son, begging him to have his body back. And it did happen. He gave the body back and so on. Now, at the same time, because Achilles wanted to honor his friend, he gave what we consider almost like a small scale of Olympics. That is, instead of having what today people do when somebody dies and they cry, they keep crying, this guy celebrated the death, I mean, not the death, but the life of the person who died. So in this case, the celebration was, as part of that, was to have the athletic games, competition with discus, running. Here is the running with the horse. And here we have now, however, Achilles himself was to die young. He knew about it, that he had been warned by his mother. In fact, one of his horses had told him, you're going to die soon. And he did. And here is where you have one of the great heroes of the Greeks, Aias or Ajax, carrying the body of Achilles away. And here is again another clear picture of carrying the body of Achilles. And the mother of Achilles, of course, with her assistants, they are burying and they are mourning the death of Achilles. But Achilles, of course, he's running out to the Elysian fields. The Elysian fields were the equivalent of what some people might call paradise. This is where supposedly the wise people, philosophers, and good people in general, when they die, they went to these Elysian fields. Now we start the end of the capture of Troy, and this happened because of Odysseus, the king of Ithaca, who Homer wrote the whole Odyssey about him, but in this case, he came up with the idea of how to capture Troy, because he could see that it would be impossible to breach the walls of Troy. So he came up with this idea of the wooden horse. And he created a gigantic wooden horse. He put probably 30 soldiers in it, and he dedicated it to Athena. So he left it outside. All the Greek fleet went away. So when one morning the Trojans looked outside, they saw this horse and not a single Greek soldier. Now, when they saw the horse, they said, it must be, some people thought this must be nasty stuff, so don't touch it. Other people said, let's take it in. Unfortunately, by taking it in, and this is when the soldiers are getting into the horse. Here is pictures from the Renaissance. I said there was a debate among the Trojans, take it in or not. And this guy was a priest, and his sons, and he said, don't touch it. The Greeks must have hid something in it. And at that moment, the snakes came out of the water and killed him. So that convinced the Trojans that, in fact, it was real, it was a gift for goddess Athena, so they took it in. Oh, by the way, this is another picture from the 16th century Greek painter Theotokopoulos, El Greco. And this is the same thing, the same. This is the horse. They're dragging it into the city. They bring it into the city. Of course, the Greeks got out and they started the slaughter, the burning of the city, and all the other ugly things that take place when one city captures another. awful stuff, awful. I mean, we know from the Peloponnesian War, for instance, that when one Greek city captured another, they killed all men, all young boys, and they sold the women to slavery. I mean, Greeks and other people become barbarians when there is a war going on, and that's exactly what happened here too. And by the way, I didn't say much, but the Trojans and the Greeks spoke the same language. They worshipped the same gods. Therefore, the Trojans, what we call Trojans, must have been a very ancient a colony of the Greeks in that part where it's Troy in Asia Minor. And the Trojan, because Troy was in such a key spot on the Hellespont, connecting the Aegean Sea with the Black Sea, they were extremely important, strategic location and so on. And therefore, there was tremendous competition. So that in addition to the idea that perhaps Paris has stolen or abducted Helen from Troy, from Sparta, and the Greeks were there to revenge and to capture Helen and bring her back. There was these strategic reasons why there was so much competition between the Trojans and the Greeks. But they were the same people. And this is another unfortunate reality that this is the son of Achilles, Neoptolemus. He sacrificed, and literally, one of the women Trojan princess, Polyxena. And this is something that we never hear, and it didn't happen often, but sometimes it did happen. And another part of the Iliad is that this idea the Romans took up, that is that Aeneas is carrying his father Anchises, who had made love to Aphrodite herself, if you can believe that. And he took his father to Rome, and he founded Rome. Therefore, suddenly the Romans had a whole mythology to explain their origins related to the Greeks and to the Trojan War. And here is the Sarandea's picture of imagery of the whole Trojan War, if you can see it. And here we have the ruins of Troy, the excavated city of Troy. And this is, of course, Mycenae in Peloponnesus. This is now the Lion Gate of Mycenae. This is, you have gigantic stones fit together very nicely, and we call them Cyclopean walls. And there are theories that the Cyclopean walls were there because there was so much warfare. But in my humble opinion, that's not the purpose of the Cyclopean walls, was to keep peace. And because you couldn't get into a city like that. Here we have a mask that they discover in the excavations in Mycenae, and some archaeologists say this is the mask of Agamemnon. We don't know, but it could be the mask of Agamemnon. We don't know. Now, as part of the Trojan War, we have this tragedy, and this is Clytemnestra. This is the wife of Agamemnon. She killed her husband the moment he arrived in Mycenae. Why? Because the husband demanded that his daughter Iphigenia be sacrificed in order to convince the god of Aeolus to start the wind to push the Greek ships into Troy. This is all speculation. Of course, we don't know what happened, but this is an explanation. And then, of course, once supposedly Agamemnon killed his daughter Iphigenia, then Clytemnestra killed her husband. Now you have the son of Agamemnon, Orestes, killing his mother. So this is really a revenge at its highest order that is abominable by both civilization and gods, and it was completely unacceptable. So here you are, after Orestes killed his mother, he went to Apollo in Delphi, and you can see Pythia, and you can see Athena, goddess Athena liked Orestes, so she wanted him to be exonerated from the murder of his mother. And in fact, it did. She managed to do that. And as a result of that, they created the first court, the Areopagus as we know it. Now we start with the sort of story of the Odyssey. And of course, the protagonist is Odysseus. And we see his picture on the left. And this is from a coin that found in Ithaca. Ithaca is a tiny little island next to Kefalonia in the Ionian Sea. And the Ionian Sea is between Greece and Italy. So it's the western part of Greece. Now Odysseus now is someone is giving him a leather bag full of wine. So that was a great gift. And in the adventures to get back to Ithaca, they come across this land that was full of this lotus flower. And the idea is that if you ate lotus flowers, you forgot who you are or who you were. So you became a lost soul, so to speak. And in this case, Odysseus is running and bringing back some of his colleagues that had eaten the lotus flowers. The next big adventure was that of the son of Poseidon, Polyphemus. In other words, they were trying to get back home and they couldn't. So they ended up in this little island, and there was a big cave, and they went into the cave, they found cheese, they found milk, food, and they had not eaten any. So they were caught by this monster, Polyphemus. And in there, Polyphemus, of course, grabbed a couple of the Greeks and he ate them. He was a cannibal, a gigantic man. And in this case, we see Odysseus offering him some wine. And Polyphemus liked the wine to the point he said to Odysseus, "Hey, what's your name?" Odysseus says, "My name is nobody." So when he got into trouble later, he called for assistance. The other monsters around him, they said, "Hey, Polyphemus, what's the trouble?" He said, "Nobody's killing me." So he said, "If nobody's killing you, so why are you bothering us?" So they went home. So that was a kind of a part of the intelligence of Odysseus. Here, after they got the monster drunk, they blinded him. As you can see. They're blinding Polyphemus. And they had to escape, of course. The Polyphemus had a gigantic stone cover in the entrance to the cave. So in order to get out, Polyphemus had to open the door because the ship had to go out. And so they tied themselves under the belly of the ship, and that's how they escaped the Polyphemus. Once they got into their boat, Odysseus made a really tragic error. He said to Polyphemus, who was blind already and dumping stones in the sea, he said, "Hey, you want to know who I am? I am Odysseus, the son of Laertes, king of Ithaca. And don't forget that." He said, "I won't forget it." So Polyphemus picked up the telephone and called his father, Poseidon. I'm kidding you, but he informed his father, Poseidon, "I am blind because Odysseus blinded me." Odysseus is the son of Laertes of Ithaca, king of Ithaca. So from that moment on, Odysseus had a powerful enemy, Poseidon, the god of the seas. Part of the adventure of getting home was the island of Aeolus. Aeolus was the god of the winds. And they ended up there for a month. He entertained them, and he finally said, "We want to go back to Ithaca." He said, I'll help you. So he put all the winds into a leather pouch. He said, "Do not open it. Just keep it next to you, but do not open it. I have only the west wind out, so the west wind would take you straight home." And so they left the island of Aeolus, but unfortunately, Odysseus was too exhausted. He took a nap. And during that process, one of his colleagues opened the Aeolus wind bag, and all the winds came out, and they pushed the ship back to the Aeolus island. At which time Aeolus said, "Get out of here. I'm not going to help you. Get lost." So they did get lost, and they ended up in the land of these cannibals in southern Italy, in southern Sicily. And these guys ate some of his crew. And they escaped, and they ended up to the island, another island of Kirti. Kirti was the daughter of the sun, Sun. She was an extremely powerful goddess, but she had a nasty habit. People she did not know, she transformed them into pigs. Here you are. The companions of Odysseus were made into pigs, but because Odysseus always had Athena as his protector, Athena told Hermes, "Go help Odysseus." So Hermes came down with the alternative. He said to Odysseus, "Eat this plant, moly, and that will neutralize the effects of Kirti's power." And it did. And Kirti understood that now she could not make him into a pig, and he had a sword ready to stab her. So they negotiated. They said, "Okay, I will bring your colleagues back into their human form, and you get out of here. But if you want to find out how to really return back to the island, you need to go to Hades, Hades. Hades is equivalent of what Christian today call hell. Anyway, this is a place where the souls of dead people go. So he said, you need to talk to this prophet, and he will tell you exactly how to get there. So they ended up in this place in northern Greece, where they are supposed to be. This is the entrance to Hades. And here Odysseus is now looking down through the water, and he saw his mother, and his mother said, I died because you did not come back. He talked to other people. Now, for instance, this young man on the left, he had died in the island of Kirke, but nobody had buried his body. So he said to Odysseus, you need to go back to the island of Kirke and bury my body. And then the next person he talked to was Aias. Now, Aias he was competing with Odysseus all the way. In fact, Aias killed himself because the Greeks did not give him the weapons of Achilles. He thought he deserved them, but the Greeks instead gave the weapons of Achilles to Odysseus. So now suddenly Odysseus looks at Aias in Hades, and despite the fact he was in Hades, he still did not like Odysseus. He did not talk to Odysseus at all. And then the next adventure is that facing the women birds, the sirens. This marvelous monsters had a beautiful voice, and they produced wonderful music and singing. No one could resist them. So Odysseus found a way to do it. He said, you tie me to this mast of the ship, and the other of you put wax in your ears. So they did that. And here is another better picture that shows you exactly what happened. You can see the sirens all over the boat, and Odysseus is listening to them, but he cannot escape to go to them. So they managed to escape the danger of sirens. And finally, here we are in the narrow straits between Sicily and southern Italy, the Strait of Messina. And here you have these two monsters. And one of them, Scylla, ate most of the followers of Odysseus. And Charybdis was a kind of a current, gigantic waves. And here Odysseus escaped the Charybdis by simply grabbing a large animal and live in the sea. And here we have now, back to the island of Sicily, they call it Thrinakia then. And he had been told that this island had a lot of animals dedicated to the sun god Ilios. And they had been warned, do not eat any of those animals, because if you do, you'll be doomed. Okay, no, here. So they see the animals, his followers were starving because of their adventures in the sea and so on. And Odysseus, again, he took a nap, he was exhausted, and they ate a couple of the cows. And as a result of that, Ilios was so furious, he spoke to Zeus, and he said, we need to destroy these people. And Zeus agreed. He said, do that, but don't touch Odysseus. So all his followers, they were drowned, and the only survivor is Odysseus. And here we see him in the arms of Calypso, a goddess that kept him for 7 years. And she was telling him, look, you stay with me and I'll make you immortal. Odysseus says, no, I love you, goddess, but I need to go back home. Athena was listening. So she went to her father, Zeus, and said, hey, daddy, we need to do something about that. I mean, Calypso is becoming a pest. So Zeus agreed, and he sent Hermes. Hermes told Calypso, you need to let him go. And she did let him go. And but there you are. Poseidon suddenly discovers Odysseus on this little boat floating on the sea. He starts a storm. He practically drowned Odysseus. And but Odysseus persisted, and finally he ends up in the island of Phaeacia, which is really the island of Kerkyra, or some people know it as Corfu. So here we see Odysseus coming out of the sea, and we see all these naked women. They were friends of Nausicaa, who was the daughter of Alcinous, who was the god, was the king of Kerkyra. So the Calypso, I mean, Nausicaa is talking to Odysseus, and he explains to her briefly what happened to him. So he said, "Don't worry, I'll take you to my father." So they ended up in the island, I mean, in the palace of the king Alcinous. He's given a feast for him. And interestingly enough, he invited a poet, kind of Demodocus, meaning the poet of the people. And he started playing music and singing. And interestingly enough, the stories he said were the stories relating to Odysseus. So Odysseus being in the audience, he burst into tears, and he eventually said to them, they asked him, "Who are you?" And he said, "I'm Odysseus, the son of Laertes, and I want to go back home." So here we see him in a boat, and he's going back to Ithaca. He lands in Ithaca, and unfortunately, he doesn't recognize it. This is 20 years later. And if I have a kind of a footnote, it happened, something like this happened to me, not that I am Odysseus, but I had, the first time I visited Kefalonia was 19 years later, after I got to the United States. And when I got to Kefalonia, I recognized the place to some degree, but everything had changed dramatically, including my sisters and so on and so on. So this happened. And here is a cave that the Phaeacians had given plenty of gifts, so they put the gifts here before they put him down on the ground, and so on. And now we take a private look at the wife of Odysseus, and she, of course, was extremely unhappy and waiting for 20 years. Penelope had been courted by a number of men from the western part of Greece and the other islands. And they, 20 years later, they were trying to convince her that your husband is dead. Why would you just get married? You are still beautiful. You're still young. So she was about 40 years old at the most. And but meanwhile, her son Telemachus, he was searching for his father. He was 20 years old young man. So he went to Pylos in Peloponnesus to speak to the king that had fought with his father. This is Nestor, the king of Pylos. And here we see the old man with his daughter. So now finally you have Telemachus on the left talking to Nestor and his daughter. And finally, this is, we have a tradition of talking about this Nestor's cup, something that is extremely ancient, around 12 centuries BCE. And here is the Greek, the translation of the Greek, one of the earliest form of Greek writing, dating from that area. It says, "Whoever drinks from this cup will dream of beautiful crown Aphrodite." On the left side, you probably see Odysseus and a dog at his feet. This is Argos, a 20-year-old dog, Argos, that recognized Odysseus. He was the first creature, the first entity that recognized Odysseus. And the moment he recognized Odysseus, he died. Of course, Odysseus was trying to be discreet because he was among the people who were courting his wife, so he didn't want to appear that he had come already. And he kept his cry, and he didn't hit it. Now, Odysseus now, he's embracing now his father Laertes. And finally, he's talking to his shepherd, watching his pigs. And this is something that I picked up, an old house in Ithaca that might have been perhaps the place where Odysseus had his pigs and other animals. We don't know, but anyway, this is it. Now, he's in the palace now, and his wife is there and his son and so on. But there were all these other guys that were having dinner. And he didn't want to appear that he was already there. And you can see this old lady, Evericlea, who knew Odysseus from childhood. So she recognized by looking by his washing his feet, which was a very interesting tradition, that when you have a guest, you wash his feet. And he washed his feet, and she recognized a wound on his leg, and she was ready to say, "Oh, this or something like this." And you can see him putting his palm on her mouth and said, "Don't say a word." And now he's of course starting the war. He's killing the people that were bothering his wife. And we're coming to the end of the Odyssey. This is an olive tree that might have been the foundation for their in their palace or in their bedroom or something like that. And finally, we have Odysseus with his whole family. That is his father, his wife, his son, and himself. And here is Odysseus again, Ithaca. And with this picture, I end up this discussion, and I'm looking forward to hearing you if you have any questions. Thank you very much.
Well, I'd like to say I enjoyed the whole thing. It was excellent. Thank you. You're such a great, is it the proper word, moderator, storyteller? Excellent. Thank you. Thank you. And I look forward to more. It's like my audio wasn't that great, so I had to be like listening carefully, but I'm going to fix it for the next time.
You sound great. You sound great.
Oh, thank you. But I couldn't hear. It's like on my side, so I had to be like this, but I'm going to fix it so I could hear better next time, so I could just, sit back and instead of being like that. But that was my technical thing on my side, but I'm going to fix that.
You sound
Can
yes.
you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
So I just wanted to say that it was a very interesting talk, and I look forward to other ones. It's hard to keep up with so many different names and situations, but in all, it was very educational, and I am looking forward to many more. Thank you for
Thank you,
inviting.
Jesse. Thank you. Thank you for joining us. Maya, you want to take over?
Yeah, this is a big story. I mean, I'm not an expert on Homer. I'm not a philologist. I'm not a classicist. But reading those two stories are so important, and they tell so much about the ancient Greeks. As I said, Homer was a polymath. You could get a picture. For instance, let's look at what Homer says on describing the shield of Achilles. He talks about two polis, one a war kind of tending polis and one of peace. The peaceful is an agrarian community. You can see the shepherds with the animals. Everything is beautiful. Excuse me. And on the other hand, you have the war going on at the same time, murders, killings, and so on. So he wanted to teach a lesson that it's best that you stay close to the land, cultivate what you need, be self-reliant, and create kind of a community.
Wow.
Well, thank you very much for the really enlightening lecture, and just to officially open it up, if anyone has any questions.
I have a few, well, I guess questions, and not questions that we can discuss a little further. I like the fact that you mentioned about the Greeks and the Trojans. If someone that is not familiar with that, they would think there are two different ethnicities, ethnicities. But the Trojans and the Greeks, they were called the Greeks Hellenes, because they had city-states, and they had different names, like the Spartans, the Mycenaeans, they were all called Greeks, and the Trojans. They should have been called Spartans or Mycenaeans and Trojans, but they put them all as Greeks because they were from the mainland of Greece. But in reality, they're the same people, the same ethnic group. They speak the same language. They worship the same gods, the same culture. So someone that's a non-Hellene, non-Greek would be confused with that. With these names, they separate the Greeks and the Trojans. In reality, they're not two separate ethnic groups. I hope I'm saying this correctly. And also, I like the fact that you mentioned Palamidis about the Greek alphabet.
Right.
That should be put out there more by the Hellenes and the scholars, the Greek scholars, because the Greek alphabet was not founded by the Phoenicians. I mean, this is the biggest fallacy ever, one of the biggest. The Greek alphabet, the Hellenic alphabet is from, the Greeks, the Hellenes. And also, Penelope's suitors, they have a symbolism. All these suitors, they symbolized something. All the different names, which I don't know, and I'm not familiar. Would you be able to give us just maybe a few of the suitors and what they symbolized?
The people that courted Penelope were
Penelope, yes, her suitors, yes.
Yeah, they were from the island of Kefalonia, they were the island of Lefkas, Kerkyra. They were from western part of Greece, and because they could see, look, there's an island, there's a kingdom. The king is missing for 20 years. He's most likely dead. So why should we not court this beautiful woman that is the queen? So we become the kings. So that's how I say it. They did it now. They abused their hospitality, of course. They were going there quite often, eating the sheep and the goats and the cows that belonged to Odysseus. They were abusing the people that used to cook for them and take care of them. And Penelope herself was very upset because she was in love with her husband, and she didn't want to marry any of them. In fact, she was playing tricks with them. And she said, I will marry the one after I finish this piece of cloth. She would do it, and then she would unravel it and do it all over again, and so on and so on. And at the very end, I didn't mention this, but there was a competition. They brought the bow of Odysseus out, and she said, whoever of you can actually use the bow, I'll marry. And no one could, except this guy who was Odysseus, but he had been changed by Athena, so she didn't look like Odysseus. He grabbed it immediately. He pulled the string and he put the arrow through all sorts of things. And everybody understood this must be Odysseus. And then he started shooting the suitors. And of course, it started almost like a civil war at the end, because the people whose sons he killed, they were going to take revenge against Ithaca. So it's a wonderful story. As I said, the most important part of these two epics is that they became the reading and the singing and the stories the Greeks said for centuries, and they identify with them. And I mentioned Aristotle, and Aristotle gave a legitimacy. Who was this guy, Homer? In fact, he did exist. In fact, he did write these two stories. He was not a fiction writer, because Aristotle says so. Aristotle, after all, he was the teacher of Alexander the Great, who created all this massive empire. And therefore, the Institute for Advanced Studies of Museion in Alexandria, which edited the first Homeric text. The Homeric text we have today came out of Alexandria, of the 3rd century BCE. And they edited them because there were a number of varieties of versions, and it's a complete story. So if the doubts of today's scholars existed, Aristotle would have discovered them, because Aristotle had the original stuff on his possession. And not only that, but he was such a widely read man that he couldn't possibly take somebody, a fictional writer, he said, this is the teacher of the Greeks. So this is why I'm very uneasy when I come across books, and they books all over, that they claim Homer did not exist, everything is fiction. And I think what these people are trying to do is to undermine Hellenic ideas, because today's age is that of undemocratic institutions emerging all over. We have the war in the Ukraine, we have war in Israel, war all over, massive starvation, hunger, we are warming the planet, we are doing things that the Greeks would not even dream of doing. I mean, the Greeks fought with each other, no doubt about that. They destroyed themselves eventually, but for centuries, they had a civilization that was pretty much democratic, pretty much they gave equality to everybody. Women, they didn't have the right that the men had, but they were the pillars of home, of family, of society, of religion. So it was a society that created all these fantastic institutions we have today. Democracy, science, architecture, arts, you name it, and it races straight to the Greeks. So how could the people like that, and especially when I wrote this book, The Antikythera Mechanism, I spent about 10 years looking at this question. I said, how come these people in the 3rd century BCE came to the point that they created this advanced technology? That technology was 2,000 years ahead of its time. So they did it because they had Homer, because they had the various scientists. The people that studied the heavens, they follow Homer. The people who study the animals like Aristotle follow Homer again. Homer, therefore, was central to the idea of being Greek. The Greek of Homer, I learned it in high school. I mean, they didn't teach much, but they gave me the spark that later on I advanced on my own. And this is what the main idea is. Now, Homer is fundamental. You should read it whether you are Greek or not Greek. Take a good translation. And there's a guy by the name of Lombardo. He's written probably one of the best translations of Homeric epics I have ever read. Lombardo. He used to be a professor. He's now retired. It's a fantastic translation. Read it and see what you get out of it. I mean, it's the idea of peace, democracy, all come through those two texts. So in a time of uncertainty and a time of violence as it is today, we need something to hold our hands to. And I think Homer is one of those pillars.
Thank you. Mariana? Welcome, Mariana. Nice to see you.
Hello, thank you so much. I am a bit upset. I missed most of it. I was under the impression my email said that it's 9 p.m. Athens time, but I guess this is because we have not changed yet the daytime savings thing.
I corrected the new one. I corrected the reminder. It was my mistake. I didn't realize it was just, it's next week that the time changes.
And but I see this is recorded. I would love to listen to what Mr. Vallenato said about this. I believe that I've heard you before talking about the mechanism of Antikythera, which was fantastic. I remember back then we learned so much. I haven't been here since the beginning, but all I have to say is that I agree that the Iliad and the Odyssey are pillars of Western civilization. It's not just the Greeks that, we have to, because they are the Bible for us, in the sense that they are to biblio, the book that has taught us about values and thought. And it goes very deep. It's layers upon layers upon layers. And also I have to say, it's just quite fascinating and amazingly written. And the vocabulary too is very beautiful and poetic. And that I hope to access a recording somehow and learn more about this. And also to say hi to some very good friends that I see there. You, first of all, Georgia and Cynthia and Ariane. Hello to everybody, and nice to see you. And I hope to see you in more of these
Hope to see you soon. Yes.
conversations.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any more questions? Anybody?
Phyllis says, Georgia, I love this lecture. Can we view this again? I would love to see it again and show my children. And
Yes,
yes,
absolutely.
this will be uploaded as a YouTube video, so you will have access to it.
Okay, when will it be uploaded?
Anthony, our main technician, IT,
Oh, you're muted, Anthony.
you're muted.
Sorry, I forgot about that. As soon as the meeting ends, it takes, I know, like Zoom, like a little bit just to like process the recording. And then as soon as I get it, you know, it shouldn't take too long to upload it to YouTube. So I might just have to like quickly do an edit or something, but it shouldn't be too long. So it probably could be today, but you know, I'd
Okay,
say
all right.
If not
by
by
the end of the
tomorrow,
weekend or
yeah.
the start of next week, definitely, if not,
Great.
but probably today.
Okay, thank you. I really enjoyed it. I'm gonna
Thank you.
log
Thank you,
off.
Phyllis. Thank you very
because
much.
I have another appointment.
Thank you for joining us. I appreciate it. Thank you.
I loved it. It was my pleasure, and I'm looking forward to more.
We will.
It was great.
This is our
Thank you
first of
so
many more
much
to
to
come.
everyone that did this. It was
Thank you.
terrific, so educational. It like took you into history, and like there was so much like new names that I never really knew, and it's like I want to hear it again where I could hear it better and totally absorb everything. It was great. Good luck, and looking forward to
you.
more.
Thank you, Phyllis. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye.
Bye, Phyllis. What amazed me the most about Homer and the Odyssey, the Iliad and the Odyssey, is that, which I've learned a few years ago, is that the children 2,000 years ago were studying Homer. It was part of their curriculum. I mean, and it goes on for over 2,000, 3,000, almost 3,000 years. It's amazing that it was part of their curriculum 2,000 years ago. And it still remains strong today.
Well, again, I want to emphasize how grateful I am to be included, and I look forward to more. At this point, I am going to disconnect because I have to do something. But I enjoyed every minute of it. I learned quite a few things, and I'm again very grateful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Everybody,
Thank you so much.
enjoy this rainy day.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Take care, Jesse. Thank
We'll
you.
talk, George. Bye-bye.
Yes. Yes. Bye. Okay.
I know Mariana asked, could you please let us know what is the name of the Homer translator? Dr. Valianatos recommended.
Yes.
Lombardo. Yeah.
Yes, Stanley Lombardo. 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 Stanley Lombardo. He used to teach at the University of Kansas. He was a classicist. And I love that translation. He's quite good, very good indeed.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Valianatos.
What I wanted to ask.
Pleasure.
Any more questions? Anybody? Cindy, Erwin, any questions?
At least I learned, I don't know if you can hear me.
Yes, yes.
I said now I learned that I've mispronounced all the names of the gods and the cities. So thank you. Thank you for the lesson. It was excellent. It was so entertaining. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. It was very well done. And my only question was answered a moment ago about the name of the interpreter.
The translator.
So
The
that's what I
translator.
wanted to know. Great.
Lombardo.
Look forward to the next lesson.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Erwin. Thank you so much. Okay, I think we're done, right?
Yeah, if there are no other questions, thank you so much, everyone, for coming and for listening. And I look forward to seeing you at the next one.
Yes. Thank you so much, Maya. You were amazing.
Thank
Dr. Valianatos, thank you very much. We enjoyed it, and looking forward to many, many more. Thank you, everyone, for joining us.
My
Thank
pleasure.
you, Georgia.
everyone.
And if I can ask, I would love to be included. This is such an incredible opportunity to be able to hear experts speak on things like this that I know I'm very interested in. So,
Absolutely, absolutely.
and then I'm going to look for it online. Thank you so much.
We will be in touch. Wonderful. Thank you, everyone. Thank you very much. And thank you, Anthony, for the tech support. We appreciate it.
Oh, I
Thank
didn't do anything. Maya took it all.
Okay, goodbye, everybody. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.